Okay, so hi everyone. Good afternoon. And I hope you've enjoyed today so far. Yes, everybody said yes. So we will. Okay, so this is supposed to be a workshop, right? But it would do us good favor to explain some concepts before we go hands-on first. So that when we start writing code, everything will make a lot of sense. Are we together? All right. So the title of this talk is a bit, and if you know me, you know me saying things like Dirty December, something that's supposed to be serious, is very typical of me. But yeah, we'll be building something that has to do with regards to Dirty December, and it's a travel guide we'll be working on, and it's going to be powered by ADK. All right. So quick things we'll be talking about, the agenda. We would simplify some of the buzzwords. I'll explain a couple of concepts. We would all get familiar with the gist, know all the terminologies. And after that, we'd have our code lab where we'd do the actual coding. And the final part is Q&A, any conclusion, and giveaways to me, the speaker. Yeah, I caught you. All right. So a couple of things. My name is Chukwuemeka Chukwurah Cruz, alleged senior dev, and that's all. That's pretty much about it. But more details, I pretty much work at Rocksteady Technologies, and when I'm not doing that, I co-organize GDG Cloud Lagos. So you must have seen some of our talks at MoneyPoint or DeepStack or some of our virtual spaces, and I co-organize that. All right. So we'll go straight into the gist, right? In this agentic era, where speed and reliability are non-negotiable, how exactly can we build production-ready agents? And by now, we most likely know everything we have to do pretty much works with an agent. And for context, an agent is some AI application that has intelligence, can understand users' intent, and can take actions, right? So three things. It is smart, it can detect intent, and it can act on it. Three things. Yeah. So then how do we build production-ready agents? So I'm going to simplify three very core concepts, and everything will make more sense when we now apply it in the code lab. But the first thing we'll talk about, we'll understand, of course, I don't think I need to explain Gemini, because I mean, you're at DevFest. Gemini has been said almost every time, multiple times now. But MCP, ADK, and Toolbox, I'll clarify those things before we go into the code lab. Okay, so moving on. ADK, first off. ADK stands for Agent Development Kit. And it might sound very serious, but it's pretty much one of the coolest tools out there, and it's very simple at that. It's basically a tool, it's basically a framework you typically want to use to build production-ready AI agents. So when you want to build AI agents, you have several options. You can use LangChain, LangGraph, and Langsmith, the whole LangChain community, or you could decide to go through the route of ADK. Now, many times you pretty much want to use ADK. Why? Because it is very friendly, especially when you're working with Google tools, because it easily integrates with the rest of Google. So like I said in my next point, it has first-class support for most of the tools you use. So with ADK, you can easily integrate Google Search. You could easily work with databases. You could easily work with spreadsheets. Anything you think of, really, with ADK, you could easily build that in. And yeah, my favorite part, it is natively supported in Python, JS, and the sweetest part is recently they released the one for Golang. So before it used to be like when you're building agents, you're stuck with either Python or JavaScript. That's what LangChain made us feel like. But now ADK has taken the extra step and written it in Go. And for those of us who love to write Golang, there's an ADK kit for you that you can use to work with to build AI applications. Okay, so a very simple ADK use. So this is me initiating, and this is Python, by the way. It looks like English, but it's actually Python. So this is me initiating an agent with the model Gemini 2.0, and it's just a simple dad joke agent. And all it does is says, you're a helpful assistant that can tell dad jokes. Only use the tool, get dad joke. So this is, in the previous session, we talked about how you can give your LLM specific instructions to do what you need them to do. And what I'm telling the LLM here to do is, I know you can tell different dad jokes, but only use the get dad joke function to get a dad joke for me. And it's simply going to do that. You can copy this code and then write it somewhere, and it's the exact thing that's going to happen. The entire is going to pick one of those jokes because I gave it that function. The function has limited the amount of jokes it can make, right? So I just pick anyone randomly, and then I return it back to the user. And that's a classic example of using ADK to like integrate with tools. All right. But, and this is just a very simple use case. You can swap that joke with whatever. It could be a database call. It could be another call in your backend that probably calls Paystack. It could even be the child API. But the point is you have a tool and you've exposed it here and you've limited the LLM's context to what you want it to have. However, while ADK in itself is sufficient for building AI agents, like I just showed you, a problem arises when agents have to communicate with existing softwares. The case comes in, how then do I build? I've worked with the LLM, I've built ADK, I have it on my laptop, I have it local, I have everything installed. But how then do I communicate with another agent in another place that doesn't have any idea of who I am? How can we make everything unified such that we can all speak with each other? Everyone came for DevFest and we might not know each other, but we all speak the same language, English, and we can all talk. How can we get, some sort of unification for all our agents? So the big question, so how do we provide feasibility between softwares without rewriting from scratch? So without having to rewrite our databases from scratch, how can we handle LLMs? How can we handle ADK? How can we have your database somewhere, your existing database somewhere, and integrate it with ADK or with any other LLM without having to refactor your database from scratch? And the simple answer, which I wrote there, is just an agreed interface or a protocol. So interfaces and protocols are pretty much what we call languages in English constructs. We all speak English, so we have a protocol we obey. Computers, on the other hand, they all speak binary, and they speak with binary, but you don't understand that binary, so you create a protocol that everybody can communicate with. So you understand the protocol, the computer understands the protocol, the other computer understands the protocol, three of us can talk together. So yes, and that's what MCP literally is. MCP is just literally the pidgin equivalent for the world of LLMs and tools. So bring it back to Nigeria. Yoruba, Hausa, Igbo, the three major ethnic tribes, and they all have different languages, but pidgin unifies us together. I could easily speak pidgin to a Hausa man and you understand, and the Hausa man will speak pidgin to a Yoruba man or an Igbo person, and everybody will understand. So pidgin is like a very general language over here. Would all agree with me, right? All right. So when you bring it to the world of MCPs, MCP is literally that equivalent. So MCP stands at that single language that your agents can speak and your databases can speak. Your external tools can speak. Google Search can speak it. Child API can speak it if you want it to speak it. Like everything can literally speak the MCP language. So because there is a single language everybody can work with, it is easier for all of us to, merge together. And a very simple diagram is, okay, so just more details. MCP officially, we call it the open standard for AI applications to communicate with external tools. It's a standard. It's a language, like we said. Protocol, interface, standard, language, all are the same. And my favorite part about MCP is because it is open, emphasis on the open up before, the openness of the protocol makes it highly adaptable. So everybody has access to it. Everybody can build around it. Because of that, it's also secure. It's an open language. Everybody is using it, so everybody would secure it together. One of the reasons why open source technology is one you want to trust very well. The ones that are open sourced are used with several use cases, and they have higher security. And because it is more adaptable, it is more resource, and it's more secure, ultimately, you can call it more reliable. Right, so you really want to trust open softwares. And when you have an open standard that can work across several systems, it will do you a good work to just trust it better. So it's more reliable. And a very simple diagram, you have your agents, you have your LLMs, and everything is speaking MCP to an MCP server. And on the other hand, over there, you have your databases. And if you look at everything is aligning to the concept of an MCP server. because that's how communication actually happens. You can have your database, which is one tool you don't care about. You could have your cloud infrastructure, and that's what you really don't even need to care about. Or you could even be the child deck backend entirely. The point is, you don't even care what it could be. You could build, we could build our spreadsheets, for example, and our spreadsheets would be built to an MCP server. It will speak the MCP protocol. The point is, because of protocols, you don't actually care about what actually exists behind the scenes. So you have your agents, you have your MCP server, and you have your tools, the external tools, and everything speaks one language. You can just swap MCP with Pigeon, and then you get the gist. Everybody's speaking the same language, so everything can work with each other anyhow. So what does this unlock? Initially, AI agents could only work with, AI tools could only work with the data they had before. So you ask ChatGPT questions, and ChatGPT says, oh, my data is limited to this so and so of July 2024. Gemini says that. But now, ChatGPT or Gemini could easily reach out to the internet and communicate using MCP to a search engine, and the search engine could give it the latest details. So that's the concept of MCP and MCP servers. So the server is just that part of the communication that understands all the MCP. So MCP would understand the LLM language and convert it. The MCP server in the middle can understand the LLM language and convert it to a language database can understand. So it's like that translator. Sorry. All right, so moving on, not to take more time. So yeah, MCP for databases. So we're focusing on databases this time. So how do we handle the communication between agents and databases? The answer is Toolbox. So Toolbox is a very simple MCP server. Go back to MCP server. That's what Toolbox is. But it's an MCP server for databases alone. Now, one of the beautiful parts of Toolbox is it securely handles your database edge cases. When you work with databases, especially in production, you see several cases. Sometimes your database can just shut down. Sometimes connections can close. Different things can happen. But with Toolbox, Toolbox handles things such as connection pooling and authentication. I meant to write authentication there, sorry. Okay, so one other thing you want to know about Toolbox it is typically configured with a tools.yaml file. And the tools.yaml file, I'll show an example of what it means. We'll clearly explain every part of these things together, and we'll see how we communicate to the database. I think we might have internet constraints, but I will explain the entire code lab walkthrough. Everybody will have it on their phones because the QR code is coming up now. Anyways, it's time for code labs. And I put a disclaimer there that if it doesn't work, we'll all blame the internet. It's not me, it's the internet. Okay, so yeah, so very simple code lab, an agent built with ADK. We store our data on Postgres, and ADK will communicate with Postgres using Toolbox. So if you take it back to, sorry, just give me a minute. Okay, so if we take it back to our diagram, here, that side is ADK, the middle is Toolbox, this other side is Postgres. That's literally what our travel agent is going to be. All right, so everyone scan the QR code, and let's get into it quickly. So we have about 16 minutes to make this thing work. I've been able to, due to the internet constraints, I was able to run a couple of things locally, although I got stuck because the internet still got me stuck. But we'll try and do it online and see if it works as well. All right? Okay, so everybody, if you have not scanned the QR code, can you raise your hand? Because I'm about to swipe. Please scan the QR code. Thank you. You have 8 seconds to do it. 7, 6, 5. All right. Thank you for scanning my QR code. All right, so let's get into it. So when you scan the QR code, it's going to take you to a code lab. The actual code lab is this. And a code lab, if you're not familiar with the concept of code lab, is a set of instructions you can follow to achieve a particular goal. So our code lab is building a travel agent using MCP, Toolbox, and all of that. Like, if I had written that for you, most likely will not be here. That's why I just called it Dirty December. So it's a sweeter name to just call it. Yes, because we're traveling in December, for those of us that travel. Okay, so moving on, code labs are just a simplified set of instructions you can follow to achieve a particular goal. They are usually specific, and they are very beginner-friendly. Emphasis on beginner-friendly. Okay, so the introduction is just concepts that I've explained before, at the end of the day, you're going to get something like this. Let me just open in a new tab. So help us, internet. Okay. So it's supposed to look like whatever is loading there. And it's just basically your own toolbox, your own guide. You could type something, tell it I need X, Y, Z, and it provides those answers to you. And that's what we're going to be building out here. Right. So moving on, first things first, before you begin, you pretty much want to configure. We're building everything on GCP, by the way. So it's Google Console. I mentioned Gemini before, ADK. So the cloud will most likely be using is Google Cloud. So we're going to use GCP Console. That's what the first step. The first step is telling us on how to just prepare everything. So you create a project, then you open Cloud Shell, which is this, and then you just initiate the CLI. So the initiating the CLI is the point of you telling you're going to be on the console. I think I can do some of those parts now. So this is the console. I clicked on this here to get the Cloud Shell. If I refresh, I hope I won't set myself up. Okay, I did not. Okay, so as soon as it just finishes refreshing, I'll just start explaining some of the content one by one. Okay, we may have set ourselves up because this is not loading up now with the internet. Again, my disclaimer before, if it doesn't work, we cannot blame the internet. Thank you. Okay, so it's popping up, it's coming up. Okay, so that's the Cloud Shell is showing up, which is this. It was clicked before, so that's why it's showing up now. Well, as soon as it reloads, which I'm just going to move on from there. So it's pretty much just configuring the CLI to show, okay, this is who I am, this is the project I want to work on, this is where I want to work. And that's what all this entire page works on. So at the end of the day, you should get something like this, which is your approval. That means you've done the right work. That says operations finished successfully. And that's straightforward. Now, the next thing you want to do is create. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this particular page open so that we can always switch by, because this is the conceptual diagram you need to have in your head throughout this code lab. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is the cloud instance, the cloud SQL instance, which is Postgres, the database side. In terms of this diagram, it is this side of things. You can see my mouse. So where the external tool is, we want to create that part. And the command is very simple. Everything here has copy and paste commands. You can copy and paste it. I have done that already, and it's created this one for me, Hotel DB instance. So you can click on, when you create, it's going to take a while because creating a database on the cloud takes a lot of time, like an average of 3 to 5 minutes. If you have very good internet, 3 to 5 minutes. Okay, so this is the Hotel DB instance, and the point of the entire ADK thing we're building here is a travel guide that has a list of hotels, and when you type there, it works with the list of hotels and tells you, oh, XYZ hotel will be available in this country, and this hotel will not be available in this country. It's pretty much, your tour guide for traveling, basically. Okay, so a couple of more instructions is telling us to do more things. Prepare the hotels. So this is just to create an SQL table. If you're not familiar with SQL, SQL is a language that you should avoid. Let's just keep it like that, don't worry. If why, I know who I give you, don't worry. So after creating the table, the next thing you want to do is insert into this table. So we're going to insert, again, remember our dad joke example. My dad joke example, I limited the jokes to a very small set of jokes. This tour guide we're building, of course, I know the countries I want to tour, right? Or let me bring it back to my reality. I know the streets in Lagos I want to tour because I'm not traveling anywhere. So I'm going to just write out. So what we're just basically going to do is we're just inserting a very limited data that our own travel guide is working with, because we're building this for us. We're not building this for the world. It is when you're building for the world, you need to now track every hotel in every country and do all of that. But I'm not going to go beyond Yanokwaja and Ojota. So you only track, the places of fun in Yanokwaja and Ojota, that kind of thing. So we're tracking these few ones, one in Basel, Zurich, Geneva, and still Zurich and Geneva. So we're basically working majorly around Geneva and Switzerland here in this example. Okay, so the next thing is just more SQL commands. Select this from hotel. It's just to play around, just to verify that your data is there. So we can verify this using the SQL Studio. This might take more time as well. You just have to select the database, Postgres. I'm going to select this and also post my password as well. By the way, it will tell you all these things I'm doing, they are all written out in the steps there. Okay, so what you want to do now is run the query you said we should do before, which was, give me a minute. Okay, this is the end goal. We'll just keep this somewhere. Hopefully our goals will align. So select this, and we are pretty much going to just, oh, not here. After I do this now, I'm going to run with the speed of light, hoping that we catch up. But yes, you can see that our database is well prepared. We have our data source already. The next thing you want to run to is, we can pretty much skip most of these things, the MCP side of things now. And I've explained all of this before, right? So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to configure our Toolbox side. Toolbox is the MCP server. And all we have to do first is download Toolbox. And after you download Toolbox, you now need to configure Toolbox. Tell Toolbox, oh, this is the database we're talking about. If you go back to this diagram here, MCP server is Toolbox once again. So we now have to tell MCP server that the details of the database behind it, the details of Postgres, so it knows how to communicate with it. And to do it is very simple. If you go back to what I said about Toolbox, we pretty much use a tools.yaml file. And the tools.yaml file, an example of that is one I have here, and I've explained a couple of concepts here. I'm sure this is very hard to see, right? This should be very hard to see. So let me zoom in properly. So let me just zoom in here. So you can see the SQL instance, my project, the DB details, and everything. Now, a tool has several functions. Child Deck backend would not be able to get a dry cleaner for you because it handles food. Very straightforward. So the tool you're building, the backend you're building, you're going to expose it. We're building a hotel backend. So there are two methods of searching for hotels. We could either search for hotels by name, or we could search for hotels by location. And we've exposed that. We're saying that this database we have can handle two things. It can handle a search by name here, and it can handle a search by location here. And after I do that, we now write, now this thing is not magic. We're actually writing the SQL that handles all of this. So you can see we're doing select from hotels where the name is this. We're doing the actual selection there. And for Postgres, for the fetching by location, we are also selecting from hotels where location is this. And then we are doing some, SQL trickery just to make it feel like this is closer, this is not closer. And all of this will be available in the slides. The entire code lab is available everywhere, so you can see that. So we have the tools we are doing. The next thing we just want to do is make sure we tell them, okay, these are the tool sets I'm exposing. So I'm exposing something called my first tool set. And the two features you can do is search by name, search by location. This might not make sense now, but it will make sense in the next slide. All right, so all of that is just to configure this. You'd pretty much then run Toolbox, which is this line here. It will start it all, and you're pretty much going to have to preview a couple of things. We have about 6 minutes to go, so I'm going to start rushing through properly. All right, so the next step you want to do, you don't even need all of this that I'm showing you here, and you can skip. Now, the next thing, we've talked about Toolbox. We've talked about the database itself. The part that has a lot of writing now has to do with the ADK side of things. Now, for the ADK side of things, you're just going to work with the Gemini CLI. First things first, you want to register your MCP server on your laptop first or on your environment, because Gemini needs to know, oh, there is a server here, an MCP server here that can handle some functionality, so I need to register it. And the registration part, maybe I should just zoom in so it's better this way. Yeah. So the registration part happens over here. So you can see we're adding it here, the scope, and we're calling it HTTP MCP toolbox, and we're pointing it to where our toolbox is running. Toolbox typically runs on port 5000, so you're just tying it. So you're telling Gemini, okay, look here if you're looking for XYZ. That's what we're telling it to do. And that's pretty much what it does here, just configuring Gemini. Now, the next part is ADK. Now, ADK is very interesting. However, ADK in itself, if you don't follow the right steps, can be very cumbersome, especially because it is Python. Thank you. So first things first, set up your Python environment, pip Python, set up a virtual environment, activate the environment. Then you install two things, just two things, ADK and Toolbox to set them up. And then when you set up ADK, you're going to just create a new ADK application. You call the application your hotel agent app, which is what we're building. And then you set up the model you want to use. So you're most likely going to use Gemini 2.5 Flash. Why? Because it is cheaper and it is faster. So Gemini 2.5 Flash, and for most of the tools you want to use, 2.5 Flash works for it. So you can set up that. You could use Vertex AI. You should use Vertex AI for building what you're building. You set your project ID here. You set the region you're working in. Sorry, excuse me. The region is US Central 1, which we specified here. If you look here, US Central 1. So you're typically going to do that. And after that, you pretty much set it up. And then you just start writing Python. The writing of Python side is quite straightforward. You're just going to copy and paste. No extra steps, no holier than down needed, right? So quickly, we're going to write everything sharp. So I've copied, I've pasted. I've copied, I've pasted. I've copied, I've pasted. And I've copied this one, I've also pasted. Basically, we built our ADK. Did I copy? I didn't copy. Where did I paste? Will I lie to you? I wouldn't. Okay, but yeah, basically because of time, actually I'm actually rushing. But yeah, you could copy and paste everything, copying and pasted. It's straightforward. ADK web at the end of the day, you'd get an interface like this. Even if you miss steps, ADK web will show you this part. Although you now you give it a prompt and then it will fail. But at least you will see interface. There's some satisfaction at some point. Right. And that's pretty much about working with ADK. If you notice what we've been saying, it's just this line of code that does the actual agent work. This is the actual agent. It's this one they just rewrote here again. This is the entire agent for ADK, right? And then, so the next thing, so that's ADK itself. Now the next part you just want to do is just connect the tool to ADK. Connect Toolbox to ADK. And how do we connect Toolbox to ADK? It's just a single line. If you notice, it's still referencing 5,000 again. And then we called it my first tool set. I said it's going to make sense at some point. My first tool set was used here. So this is the point where it makes sense. So everything is going to tie back to each other at the end of the day because it's a software engineering. It's a scam. Okay, so we'll load it up, and that's just the all connection you need. And the favorite part about tools, if you remember when I gave the dad joke was very simple. We are tying tools to something called tools, if you can see the slide. And when we now had a very large ADK toolbox engine that uses databases and all of that, at the end of the day, we're still tying it the same way we tied the previous one. That explains the adaptability of ADK. So even if you were to build a whole new world of database and data sources, at the end of the day, it's just one line that links them up together. All right. And that basically runs the entire ADK web. You run it, it will show up, and I promise you, the only reason why we're not doing this is because of internet. So because the internet was even bad, I even had to work up on slides to explain a lot of concepts. But yes, everything here, running ADK, run agent web, it runs it completely. Then what you want to do, which is very important, after the code lab will finish, billing will remain. If you don't clean up your accounts, please do not look for me. I would not, because in my code lab, I have specified you should clean up. So if you refuse to clean up, that's entirely on you. But it's not going to cost much. All of you are rich. So it's like less than $1, honestly, it will cost. So you're going to just delete everything and move on. And then the best part, sorry? Student edition. Hey, don't worry now, student edition, don't worry. They gave you free Gemini Pro now. You have free Gemini Pro access, so you're good to go. And yeah, that's pretty much what it takes to actually build a travel agent. Right. So yeah, congratulations. You can see I was just congratulated. So I truly copied and pasted since he congratulated me now. Thank you. All right. So I think that's pretty much it. So with the next 20 seconds we have, does anybody have any question?
I recently worked on a project and I happened to use MCP,
Okay.
MCP to build it. So I was wondering, what advantage would I get if I should apply ADKs to it?
Okay, so you built an MCP using what tool? Just Gemini?
Yes.
You just use exactly just Gemini. So when you want to, when the advantage of ADK, it comes when you're building agents. So if you just need textual responses, Gemini, this is my question, give me an answer, you're good to go. But a different case now happens when you want to take action. When action has come in place, when you want Gemini to, okay, when I say, what's the nearest bakery to me, Gemini can give you that answer, fine. But Gemini cannot go to that bakery shop and place an order for you. That's where you need an actual agent to take action. That's where ADK comes in. So ADK sees the Gemini under the hood. If you remember, we're linking Gemini 2.0 Flash, but it now comes with a framework you could use to take specific actions. Because if you decide to do it without ADK, you write a lot of code. And a lot of code written by you and not reviewed by the entire world, is more susceptible to errors than the opposite, which is already open source. So no need to reinvent the wheel. So you want to build an agent that actually acts on intentions, you use ADK for it. Does that answer your question?
So yes, let me just echo. Can I echo? Okay, good. So for example, what I'm technically doing is that I'm telling the AI that if I want to perform a certain task, you should follow this set of instructions and use these tools to be able to perform that action.
Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. That's function calling, and it's not really taking much action. For simple things, for simple tools like that, you could use function calling, fine. A case comes when you have several tools you want to act together, or you want to link several functions together. You need something to orchestrate this together. That's where ADK comes into. All right. No more questions. Thank you for having me. And no more questions. Yeah. So in the absence of questions, the final part is, thank you. Thank you, guys.